Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is April and today I'm going to be sharing some tips for shopping for a new sewing machine. I've been sewing and creating content for over 12 years now, and throughout those years, these have been the machines that I've been using on this channel. Before these three machines, I was using a very affordable mechanical Kenmore sewing machine that was my mom's, and that's the machine I started off with. And then from there, I upgraded to this computerized juki that was gifted to me from sewingmachinesplus.com early on in my YouTube career. And then a few years later, one of my subscribers sent me this computerized brother machine right here, which I love as well. And then Bernette sent me the B38, which is a smaller computerized machine, which is still very powerful and great to use. So this is the one I'm currently using. Not only will I be talking about the computerized machines, I also want to cover the mechanical machines as well, because they are the more affordable option, and it's what I started out on as a beginner, so I'm sure beginners will find it easy to use as well. After so many years of sewing, I feel like I actually have some experience and can tell you what I love most about machines and what I think you should look for as a beginner or an experienced sewer. So I hope this helps you out, and let's get started. Whenever anyone asks me for a sewing machine recommendation, it really depends on what their budget is, because if it was me, I'm gonna tell you to invest in the most expensive sewing machine you can, because the more expensive the machine, the better quality sewing and the more useful functions that come on those machines as well. Once you do know what your budget is, it makes it that much easier to filter out and narrow down your choices. If you are on a tight budget though and don't want to spend too much money, I think if you can find one between $200 to $300, that will be your sweet spot for a decent machine. The next thing I think you should consider is if you want a mechanical sewing machine or a computerized machine. I did say that mechanical machines are more affordable, but you can still find an affordable computerized machine as well. Here are the differences between a mechanical and a computerized machine. A mechanical machine is more affordable. It doesn't have a lot of stitch settings and functions on the machine, and you have to make changes on the machine by turning the knobs. They are very easy and simple to use and a great choice for beginners. However, I do think that the quality of their stitches are not as nice as a computerized machine. Computerized machines are a little bit more high-tech. They come with a screen on, and you use buttons to change your stitch settings. Whenever you turn your machine on and off, the machine automatically resets. They are more expensive depending on how many features and functions come with your sewing machine. But overall, I think that the quality of the sewing is a lot better than a mechanical machine. So first up is the B38, and I'm gonna just sew them one after the other. The red thread is the mechanical machine and the yellow thread is the computerized. They're pretty comparable, but I can still tell that the computerized machine sews a cleaner stitch. But that's pretty good quality for a mechanical sewing machine. This one is my mother-in-law's sewing machine. She has a mechanical Singer, and it's half the price of the Bernette. So I'm curious to compare the two and see the differences. This is the Bernette stitching, and I'm gonna sew right next to it. Okay, so the purple thread is the singer and the red thread is the crafter, and you can visibly see the difference in the quality of sewing. The singer is not as straight and clean as the more expensive bernette machine, so if I did have the singer, I'd probably use extra sharp sewing needles to improve the quality of the stitching. This machine will still get the job done, but the stitching won't be as pretty as more expensive sewing machines. I even tested the sewing quality on my old Kenmore sewing machine, and it had the worst stitch quality out of the 3 mechanical sewing machines. It looks like a tension problem, but even after playing around with the tension and stitch settings, nothing changed, so it's probably gonna take some time to figure out, or maybe that's as good as it's gonna get since it's such an old machine. My next tip is to know what type of projects you plan on sewing. Are you going to be doing embroidery? Are you sewing clothes? Are you doing upholstery? Because depending on the type of material that you plan to sew on your machine should probably be able to handle that. So if you're working with a lot of heavy duty materials, then get yourself a heavy duty sewing machine. Or if you are planning on doing a lot of embroidery, then you might want to search for a machine that has enough stitch designs for you to play with. Or maybe you just want to hem your pants and skirts every so often, so then a simple and affordable machine might be more reasonable for you. Whatever sewing machine that you decide on getting, whether mechanical or computerized, I think the most important thing is to make sure that your machine has the necessary stitches for you to sew whatever project you are working on. Besides the straight stitch and zigzag stitch, I also think it's important to have the stretch stitch, which is for sewing stretchy fabric. It's similar to the zigzag stitch, but a lot cleaner because it looks more like a straight line. I think the blind stitch is an important one so that you don't have to sew a blind stitch by hand. And overlock stitch is really useful if you don't have a serger because it will finish the raw edges of your fabric for you. And the last one is a buttonhole stitch, because you'll need to create buttonholes when creating clothes or costumes or any projects that require a buttonhole. Each of these computerized machines already have those stitches included, which is great, but there are some mechanical sewing machines that have all of those stitches included as well, so make sure you check before buying. The next thing you should look at are the accessories that are included with each machine, because some of the stitches that I mentioned do require you to use a special presser foot with them. So if it already comes with your machine, then you can save money by not having to buy additional presser foots. The next important thing to consider is the size of your workspace and what size sewing machine it can accommodate. These are pretty big sewing machines, but I do have one that is even bigger, and it's an embroidery sewing machine, so it has attachment to it. But these are pretty big machines compared to this one. This is comparable to the mechanical sewing machines. And with a smaller machine, it is lighter as well, which is why I currently enjoy using this one, because it has all the features I love and the size that makes it really easy for me to take on and off my table whenever I need more table space. The next thing you should know before buying a sewing machine are the special features and functions that come with them. I think that this might apply more to computerized machines than mechanical, because mechanical machines can only have so many features on it, but on a computerized, there's a lot of really useful buttons that you can press that will make your sewing process a lot more enjoyable and efficient. So I mentioned earlier that I started off with the juki before my subscriber sent me the brother, and then I found myself reaching for the brother more because it had this one function that the juki did not have, and that was the automatic thread cutter, which is so useful and saves you thread and time, so you don't have to pull your fabric out and cut it at the side of the machine. You just push that button and it automatically cuts your thread for you. This is why I like the automatic thread cutter button, because then you don't end up with a lot of this and you have to clip the threads, and sometimes the slicer on the side doesn't cut it either, and then you're like continuing to like pull your thread. And it cuts it for me. I can just lift this up and pull it out. Another feature that the Brother has that the Juki didn't was start and stop sewing, which is an automatic sewing feature that is done by just pushing a button and the machine will sew without you having to step on the presser foot, which is really handy if you can't use your feet or don't want to and want to just, you know, do everything by hand. For this machine, it's pretty much the best of both worlds. It's small but very mighty, and it includes all the features that I just mentioned on the Brother that I love, which is the automatic thread cutter and the start and stop sewing. Something my Juki machine has that beats the other two is the extra high presser foot lift. This function is so useful for sewing thick materials or multiple layers of fabric by allowing you to easily slide your fabric under the presser foot and pull it out. My other machines do have this feature, but they don't raise as high as the Juki does. And I just love how the Juki feels compared to the other ones. The next feature to consider are how many built-in stitches come with your machine. If using decorative stitches is important to you, then choose a machine with stitch designs you like and will use. If not, then just make sure it has those must-have stitches I mentioned earlier. I personally don't use all of these decorative stitches, so the amount of stitches advertised is not something I care too much for. This next feature will be hard to figure out if shopping online, but some sewing machines do have better lighting than others. I turned the lights off and it turns out that the Brother has the best lighting. It's also the most expensive machine out of the three, so I'm not surprised. I also really like that the screens are lit up on the Brother and the Bernette compared to the Juki. The most surprising thing was comparing the more affordable mechanical machine to the more expensive computerized, because the B05 Crafter has way better lighting. You would think the B38 would have better lighting since it's more expensive, but I guess it's not always about the price. Personally, I always sew in a well-lit room, so this feature isn't at the top of my list, but if lighting is important to you, I recommend looking for a machine that has 2 light bulbs instead of 1. I only noticed while comparing all the machines, but the well-lit machines have 1 light above the needle area and a second light in the middle of the machine to light up the rest of the workspace. The next very important function I think everyone, especially beginners, should have on their machine is speed control. This allows you to sew at one pace the entire time. This means you can sew as slow as you want to, no matter how hard you're stepping on the presser foot. The next function is an automatic needle threader, which helps thread the needle for you. This feature can be a hit or miss because sometimes it works the first try, and other times you have to try 3 or 4 times for it to work. I don't have any problems with it on my machines, but I have experienced bad needle threaders on other machines before. The next feature is a top-loading bobbin. This makes it really fast and convenient to switch and refill your bobbin. It won't prevent you from sewing on an empty bobbin because that's inevitable, but I do prefer it to machines that have the bobbin underneath because then you have to slide the table off to access it. These types of bobbin systems also have a metal bobbin holder. You do have to take this out to put your plastic bobbin inside of it. The next feature I want to talk about is the storage compartment. This doesn't seem as important, but I recommend staying away from machines that require you to slide the table off to access the storage as well. Go with a machine that has a front storage compartment where you can just flip it open to quickly access your tools and accessories. Even on this old Kenmore machine, I love that it has the compartment that opens up on top instead of the kind that you have to slide out and access. There's so much more that I can go into on sewing machine features, but like I said, the more features a machine comes with, the more expensive it will be. For example, here are two computerized machines that look and sew pretty similarly, but the B37 is cheaper by $250 because it has less features. So it's really up to you how much money you want to spend for the other fancy features, because it's not necessary to have them, but I do think it's worth investing in if you sew a lot like me. If you're a beginner and don't know how often you will be sewing for yet, my last tip would be to shop for a machine at the thrift store or on the Facebook marketplace first. There's nothing wrong with a secondhand sewing machine. I started off with one, it was my mom's, and now that machine we actually passed on to my grandma because she prefers the simple mechanical machines. All right, those are all of my tips for buying a new sewing machine. I hope it helps you out. And if you know anyone else that is searching for a sewing machine, make sure to share this video with them. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well. See you next time. Bye!